And welcome to our first ever Cannabis Focus Program at the Mill Valley Film Festival. Jim McAlpine, who's founder of the 420 Games, and he's one of the most prolific cannabis entrepreneurs of the last few years. So Jim, come along, and let's give him a big round of applause.
Thank you. Hey, so for me it's amazing today. I just love seeing cannabis coming into the mainstream. I was also asked to moderate a panel similar to this at South by Southwest this year, and just to see the community and the people out here that are interested in this is it's just an amazing time to be alive. I personally have 3 ventures in the space. I got a little water in my beard here. I started a company called Snowbomb that's been around for about 20 years, and when the drought came in, I got into the cannabis industry 2 years ago. My first company was called the 420 Games. We'll see a little short about that later. I'm opening the world's first cannabis gym with Ricky Williams in San Francisco, where you can actually consume cannabis, and we teach you how to integrate cannabis into your athletic routines. And thirdly, I have a partner in a brand called CANNABIS, where we make microdose cannabis products for athletes specifically. And then finally, my 4th venture in the space, next week we have a big tech show in San Francisco. It's called the New West Summit. It's focused on the future of cannabis. We have Sir Richard Branson as our keynote speaker. We have the voice of Siri, her name's Susan Bennett there. Steve D'Angelo, who's going to be at the next panel. And it's an amazing, amazing look into the future of cannabis and how technology will bring cannabis into the mainstream. So that's myself. I'm going to wait to introduce the panelists. We've got an amazing 10-minute short here that has 2 of our panelists on it. And why don't we just hit the lights and show that film, and then we'll bring up everyone on stage and start a discussion. Thank you.
An understanding that this is something special that people participate in because it's part of a way of life.
The embrace of the land and the embrace of the cannabis and the embrace of the community. That's really what the California Way is all about.
It's the California way.
It's the California way.
The California way.
It's the California Way.
That's cannabis, the California way.
So like I said, there were some really scary numbers at the end of that movie there. I implore you all to watch a movie called Concussion with Will Smith as well, a tearjerker. Very educational as well. So, you know, wow, personally, I can relate on a small level. I'm an athlete, I'm pretty banged up, I skied, I played soccer, but you know, these guys that played in the NFL, it's just a whole different level, as Perry said. And you know what I'd like to do? Instead of introducing each one of these guys, why don't we start with Adam and go down the line? And Adam, how you doing? Why don't you introduce yourself?
I'm wonderful. Yeah, I'm a former NCAA football player. Just to be clear, I definitely did not play in the NFL. I played Division III football, which is pretty much the lowest rung of NCAA football. Currently, I'm the co-founder and run business development and marketing at Flowcana, the video you just saw before, the HelloMD one with Ryan and Perry here.
Hey everyone, I'm Ryan McBean, retired NFL player. Me and my wife, we're now residing in Sydney, Australia. We are retired and enjoying life. Thank you.
Before I introduce myself, I just want to have the audience show appreciation for Ryan and his wife Stephanie for the courage to help us make this movie and to bring their long journey out in public. So I just want to I'm Dr. Perry Solomon. I'm a board-certified anesthesiologist and chief medical officer at HelloMD, the leading digital healthcare platform for medical cannabis. We provide telehealth evaluations for patients who in California who want to get cannabis recommendations, and cannabis consumers, medical cannabis consumers, and anyone thinking about cannabis can go on our site and ask questions, and our community of doctors, experts, and product manufacturers can answer them, as well as other people who have similar medical conditions can talk about what it is that works for them.
My name is Kevin House. I'm an ex-NFL player also. Currently I'm living in Walnut Creek. I'm from Florida. So I'm glad to be here.
Thank you all for being here. Apologies for jumping in without introducing you guys. So, you know, honestly, I'm a crier. I had teared up again when I watched that movie, and again, it makes me angry. I don't want to go into my anger, and I don't really want to go into the NFL right now. What I'd like to talk about is, you know, Ryan, now that you're past all that, tell us a little bit about how cannabis is helping you in your life now past your NFL career.
Well, it's for me, with a mixture of daily workouts, my ketosis diets, cannabis is involved as a daily thing to help me deal with that pain. My pain isn't going away, I understand that, and so does my wife, and she's there to help me daily to help me deal with that pain. I also realize that as soon as I stop, it doesn't take, you know, like opioids, once that drug wears off, the pain comes right back. So it's very important to me, but it's also important that I can continue to stay in shape and do the right things with my health.
You know, a lot of people think it makes you lazy, but it's very counterintuitive, and it can be a very productive and enhancing thing to your athletic and career and your just your workout in general. So Adam here's a friend of mine, and I know he has a story about getting hurt and having to use opioids, and why don't you tell us a little bit about that?
Sure, thanks, Jim. Yeah, so my junior year in college, I had a pretty significant back injury. It was a pretty severe herniated disc that I had surgery on. Herniated discs, they're not the most serious injury in surgery. It's about a 6-week recovery. It's probably certainly not like some of Ryan's injuries, but nevertheless, I was prescribed Percocet for probably about a month or so, and I was using that for probably the first 4 or 5 days, and similar to what Ryan said, I really did not want to do anything. I pretty much felt like I was melting into the couch. I pretty much just wanted to watch TV, had no motivation to get out, do my exercises, and walk around and really get the blood flowing, which is really important when you have surgery on your lower back, to just really get the blood flowing and moving around, and I did not want to do that at all. So I pretty quickly realized this was not going to work, so I turned to cannabis, which I'd been using fairly regularly, but didn't really think about how it could directly help this injury. When I started using that, I was able to really decrease the amount of Percocet I was using, and had a lot more energy. The motivation got up, and started walking around doing the exercise that really helped me rehab and get better more quickly.
You know, a friend of mine, Steve D'Angelo, explains that a lot of people just think they're stoners because they use marijuana. But if you really start thinking about it, many people that use cannabis, if they drill down in their mind, there's a reason behind it. They come home and they're stressed, their back hurts, whatever it may be. And so, that's my mission, is to teach the world that marijuana does not equal stoner. The person defines themselves, the plant does not define the person. And so on the opioid stuff, I know there was a little bit in the film, but Dr. Solomon, do you want to go on a little bit about the contrast between cannabis and opioid use for recovery?
Well, part of it is, at this point in time, what can a physician actually give their patient to treat their pain? And the way it's set up now as a Schedule I drug, it's very difficult for a doctor to pull out a prescription pad and to say, okay, the prescription is for Vicodin, here it is, and here's another prescription pad. Even if it gets to Schedule II, I'm going to write a prescription for cannabis. Well, there is no standardization. There's no way for a physician to be able to do that, even in states where it's legal. So you're really kind of stuck as to what you're able to give a player, in Ryan and Kevin's case, for their pain. So the leagues, as I said, realize that cannabis can be used. They just can't have anything to do with it in terms of saying, we're going to be able to give this to you, our physicians can give this to you, because it's only 25 states and DC where it's legal medically. And so professionally, in the other states, you can't even touch it or talk about it. So there is a little bit of a problem until it gets off that Schedule I designation to be able to even start using it legitimately for pain by the doctors in the leagues themselves.
Yeah, research is a big problem, and thankfully we're headed towards California's domino coming down and bringing this thing nationally legal where research will be much easier to compile. It's interesting to me too, you know, the NFL, in contrast to all these other leagues, the NBA, Major League Baseball, they said, you know, hockey doesn't test. I think the entire NBA would be suspended if they tested the NBA. So, you know, to me, again, it's interesting. I think Junior Seau's death from CTE was really what turned the corner for the NFL to make them have to face this problem. If you watch the movie I talked about, you know, there were hundreds of suicides that they tried to just brush under the rug because of brain injuries. And, you know, Junior's unfortunate death, being a Hall of Famer, has forced them to really address this. So I pray that they open their eyes, or at least are forced to have someone else open them for them.
Well, the fact, like you mentioned, the fact that opioids cause all the deaths that we talked about, and you see in the paper day after day after day of people overdosing with their children right in the room, etc., and you just read these stories over and over and over again, there does need to be an awareness with the population and physicians in general that there is an alternative, and cannabis is one of them.
So going away from the opioid discussion, there's another something in there you talked about. There's THC and there's CBD, cannabinoids. In our bodies, many people don't know there's something called the endocannabinoid system. And I'll quickly tell you that many people think the runner's high comes from endorphins, but science hasn't proven, but it's looking like the actual source of the runner's high, or at least part of it, is the endocannabinoid system, which is your internal body producing basically cannabis inside of you. I'm not scientific enough to say that the right way, so maybe again, back to Dr. Solomon, if you want to talk briefly about, you know, what is the endocannabinoid system? I don't think a lot of people know what that is.
Well, it's interesting. Many people don't know what it is, and physicians, most of them, don't know what it is either. It was a system of really homeostasis or balance that was found out and discovered in the 1960s by an Israeli scientist, and it's been documented in 20 to 30,000 publications, and essentially it's a system that gives feedback to the other systems of the body to be able to calm down, relax, get back into sync with each other. So usually nerve fires and something comes on the other end, and this way is a feedback mechanism to make everything equal so that there's homeostasis balance in your body. So a nerve, instead of firing very fast and abruptly to give you pain, the endocannabinoid system winds up producing something called an anandamide that calms everything down. And people who have a lack of that, or there's an excessive amount of that production, can use something else similar to that, which is THC and CBD, to do the same thing, to give a feedback mechanism so that the system gets more in balance. And that's pretty much in a nutshell what it is. Unfortunately, there's only one medical school in the country that teaches a course about the endocannabinoid system, and 13% of the other ones only give it a brief, cursory mention. So the education needs to start with physicians knowing about it, that there is something out there. Even in the states where they can write a recommendation for it, they don't do it.
Well, the New York Times just wrote about it last week, so you can Google it and just endocannabinoid New York Times, and there's a great article about that. So, you know, Ryan and Kevin, what I want, you guys are the NFL big dogs up here, and it sounds like, Ryan, you did not use cannabis before you were in the NFL, and you explored it for your first time during your career?
Yes. Yes, I like I said in the video, once that injury happened, I started taking opioid just like Adam, and soon after, I just decided, you know what, I'm not going to do this to myself. Again, you know, there was no motivation, no drive to get up out of bed and get work done. And a lot of athletes in the NFL to this day would you know, secretly, you know, testify and say, hey, listen, you know, without cannabis, I couldn't make it throughout the season. I've had pro bowlers, I mean, numerous men come up to me and say, hey, Ryan, I wouldn't make it the whole season without indulging in cannabis to treat my pain. You know, a lot of our fans and a lot of people think that, hey, listen, you know, this is it's just a 6 months out of the year where we just play and our bodies are okay after we get done. That's the total lie. We deal with that pain year round. We have to take care of our body. We have to take care of ourselves. And cannabis is, I believe, is the only way to deal with that pain consistently. I'd rather not be on opiates for the rest of my life. To answer your question, man, it's really just for us, for me, and for the athletes in the NFL, it's really just being used as pain management.
Well, I mean, that's another example for me, you know, if someone hasn't done it their whole life and someone educates them that this can be a benefit to them, that's what's happening perpetually right now in our society. And society's learning that this isn't a drug or a gateway drug, it's a beautiful plant that can help us in many ways. Kevin, you know, personally, I used cannabis since I was young in my athletic career, and I never became a professional athlete. Did you use cannabis before you were in the NFL?
Yeah, I actually didn't drink or smoke until 18. I didn't really start using the cannabis until 21. Started learning the benefits of it slowly but surely. In 2005 is when it became part of my daily life. Broke up of my forearm, had a plate and 6 screws put in it. The pain from that and the rehab from that, I started smoking. They put me on these pills and I got hooked on Vicodin and painkillers for a long time. And I lost about 20 pounds off painkillers. It kind of messed up my season, the next season, because I had to get my body back in shape again after the opiates. Marijuana helped me with that. It helped me gain the weight, took the pain, because I still suffer from the pain nowadays. So that's why I'm here today, because I know this cannabis can help me a lot more than a pill can, and it has.
So, Dr. Solomon, you know, I want to have everybody here trying to talk about their own cannabis use to their own comfort level, but you know, let's hear about your own personal experience with cannabis.
No one's recording it.
Opioid overdoses.
You didn't know I was going to ask him this question.
No. I appreciate the question. I hear the question. Opioid overdoses are the leading cause. No. I have a cannabis recommendation, and what I personally have used it for is when sleeping at night. Sometimes I lay there and my mind is just whirling about what I'm going to say today, for example, or whatever. And it does help me relax and sleep. And I think partially what you touched on before was that there are a lot of people that take it and not quite sure, like they say it makes them feel good, or it says, you know, I can really focus. And I think you mentioned this before about athletes. And if you look at it, everyone really has that, they're all based on medical conditions. In other words, this endocannabinoid system could be out of focus. In other words, you take it because I want to concentrate, I want to work on my body, I want to feel it. Well, is your real issue that you may have a little ADHD, and instead of taking Adderall or Vyvanse, you may smoke cannabis to get you back into balance, or you have insomnia. Well, people, instead of taking Xanax or something to sleep, would have cannabis again to get their system back. So reasons that people take it can vary across the board, but it's probably all based on medical conditions that you're just not in balance.
Thank you. I'll ask Adam too, and I'm going to share a personal experience. But you know, in your athletic, you know, staying in shape now, do you use cannabis? I'm going to kind of come at it from a different angle. Do you use cannabis when you work out to recover right after? What's your current usage of cannabis in your athletic lifestyle?
Sure. I wouldn't say I typically use cannabis when I'm going to the gym or doing some sort of, you know, like heavy weightlifting, but it's more when I'm getting outside, whether it's going for a bike ride or swimming, playing tennis, anything where I'm getting outside and being active, where it's kind of like a light cardio activity that has a little bit of competitiveness and more fun rather than just kind of being in the gym throwing the weights around.
Awesome. I'm kind of similar. I have an ADHD issue and I have a bad back and knees, so I'm a swimmer. I've swam from Alcatraz and I used cannabis. I ate it about a half hour before my swim, and it really helped me focus and get into the shoreline. And my point in telling that isn't to say I'm cool and I swam from Alcatraz. It is that cannabis affects everyone differently, and the person next to me, if they had eaten the same dose, they might have drowned. And really, honestly, that's an issue, as Dr. Solomon brought up. You know, cannabis affects each person very differently. So I think it's something I want to exude is you need to ease into it, and you need to know who and what you are and how cannabis affects you as an athlete. In our gym, we don't just say, hey, you can come in here and use cannabis. We do a test. We work out sober with you at a baseline. So the point is that I use it for focus. These guys use it for recovery. It can be used many different ways, but what's very important is to understand, if you drink alcohol, you're all kind of going to get the same feeling. Two people can smoke the same marijuana and have a very polar opposite feeling. So again, it's a hard thing to prescribe because of that. Correct, Dr. Solomon?
It's a recommendation.
Yes, excuse me, and it is not a prescription, it's a recommendation, but going back to that question.
Yeah, yes, it is very individualistic about what reacts with different people, and we get the question all the time at HelloMD in terms of how much should I take, what should I take, and it varies on the person, it varies on the time of day even, in terms of the meal you ate. If you had an edible and it's very greasy, it may react differently than if you just had a light snack or a vegetarian meal. And then there's different ways to use it. As you know, you can vape it, smoke it, ingest it, or topicals as well. So what affects Ryan as a big guy, and Kevin as almost a little bit bigger than me, way bigger muscles, will affect me and Adam quite differently. So I think it's a very individualistic thing, and everyone goes low and slow when you start any cannabis, no matter what it is.
Yeah, and as we move towards recreational use, which is a term I don't personally like, there's this middle ground, and what I'm personally trying to show, and I think all these other guys understand up here, is cannabis can be used for wellness. You know, I have a prescription, excuse me, Dr. Solomon, I have a recommendation for cannabis use because of my bad back, my L4, my L5, my knees, my ADHD, but I also now, because I'm using it, see all these other benefits athletically, etc. So wellness is a word I want people to think about. You don't talk about, this is recreational alcohol. You have a glass of wine and you relax. So wellness is something in the middle that I think people also need to understand. It's not just I take it for medicine or I take it to get high. There's a large middle ground there.
And I think that point of health and wellness is very key, because with the body being out of sync, you're essentially unwell, and that's why you may have the pain, the migraines, the ADHD problems, and to get back to being well is what cannabis can help you do. So health and wellness is definitely a better way to phrase it, I think.
So from Arnold Schwarzenegger and Lou Ferrigno for the younger people in the audience, Tim Lincecum here in the Bay, Michael Phelps, the fastest man ever in water, Usain Bolt, the fastest man ever on land, my partner Ricky, these prolific athletes up here. I think it's pretty obvious that cannabis doesn't make you lazy or a bad athlete. Again, it's the person who defines themselves. So the athletic series I started is called the 420 Games. Just in August, we had over 1,000 people go to Golden Gate Park. We all ran 4.20 miles. Nobody smoked, nobody used cannabis on site. We all had our kids there. And it was an advocacy run, just like for breast cancer awareness or for gay rights. So we're gonna have just a quick, I think it's about a minute and a half. I think the screen hopefully won't come down on our heads, but we're gonna show a quick clip here. So if we could just cue that one up real quick, and we'll be right back at you.
Goodbye, everybody.
See you on the
Thanks for coming.
I'm going home to my city by the bay. Welcome to the 420 Games Program, annual volunteer card. Anybody can beat this man today, I'm going to be very happy to give you $1,000.
Thank you. So that looked like a big bunch of stoners, huh? The vibe at those events are incredible, and again, this collective consciousness and the understanding and the camaraderie that we feel at these events is just, it's educating other people. We don't smoke at those events, so the outside looking in literally and figuratively don't see smoke and think that that kind of stoner Jeff Spicoli stigma, to use a film reference at a film festival. And to note, you know, the winner of our last 3 events, you saw me saying, look at this guy's back. That man's name is Avery Collins. He is one of the top 10 ultra marathoners in the world. He just ran 100 miles with 48,000 feet of gain and came in first place. And he's the world record holder in a 200-mile race. So he's won our last 3 events by a long distance, so that's why I was confident no one was going to beat him. But I think he's another perfect example. I mean, literally, the world record holder for 200-mile run is a daily cannabis user. So as we get a little bit closer here to the end, I want to do a Q&A. But is there anything any of you guys would like to say that I haven't asked? I want to give everyone an opportunity to just kind of say something that's on their mind that they want to share with the world here about cannabis and athletics.
I always have something to say.
I knew it would be him.
I have no trouble speaking. I just want to say that as the film portrayed about Ryan, that opioids are a terribly dangerous drug and a terrible path to go down. And we've seen the result many times of this happening. And pharmaceutical companies are partly to blame. They developed a condition based on it that you saw at the Super Bowl, opioid-induced constipation. And they now have a drug to treat the common problem that they started in the first place. And I think that using cannabis, when it becomes as a recreational, people will still be using it, but as I said before, for real medical issues, because they may take it to relax. Well, yes, you can relax from alcohol. This is a better way to do it, instead using cannabis.
Awesome.
For me, I just want to, I guess the stigma on cannabis within the NFL. You know, it's pretty sad that, you know, we can win a big game and our fans, they go out and they have a drink of beer and they, you know, light their cigars and, they out in public or in the privacy of their own home. But NFL players, they are forbidden from having the ability to go in their privacy in their own home and light up a cannabis that they're using to recover from that previous game. So it's sad, and you do your digging and you realize that, hey, listen, the reason why, these things are banned in the NFL is because of the amount of money that the NFL makes from keeping it banned. And once you understand those things and put a magnifying glass on it, then you truly understand it's why. But it's sad that, our rights are being taken away, and to have the choice to have a choice. And that to me is sad, and I hope that things change in the future. Thank you.
It's funny, after a game, you get a big box, and go around your airplane, around your seat, with labels of all the different medicines. You pick them up and get what you want, and you take your medicine.
Like M&Ms.
Nobody prescribes it. You pass it to the next player, but you can't smoke cannabis. It makes no sense.
Yeah, I'm sure they're not looking over your shoulder saying, please don't take more than one of these, sir.
Right.
Yeah, so it's sad, but we're moving in the right direction there. Let's see here. Do you have anything you want to say? No? All right. All right then. Well, we're getting close to the end here. I guess why don't I make a Q&A session where you guys can kind of raise your hands and I'll pick you guys to ask a question if anybody would like to do that. Is there anybody in the audience that would like to ask a question?
Over here.
I see.
Okay, well, how about this gentleman over here on the right?
Hi guys, I'm Michael Perman. Thanks for your poignant stories about cannabis and pain relief. I'm wondering about the 200-mile guy. And doctor, I wonder if you can help us understand how might cannabis enhance performance on a anticipatory training well-being level?
Well, I think the same thing, and I mentioned about someone being able to concentrate on their body, concentrate on their muscles, on their stride. So instead of having their mind perhaps being wandering all over the place in terms of, am I going to make this race? Am I actually going to do this? Their mind can be more focused in terms of, perhaps this gentleman may have ADHD and not being able to concentrate on what he's doing, and you're able to use cannabis to fulfill the endocannabinoid system to get him in balance so he's able to laser focus on what's going on, as well as the anti-inflammatory effect that it would have to hopefully prevent any, because 200 miles is a hell of a long race, and you know you're going to have some inflammation to your muscles, and by using this, he's essentially preventing that inflammation from happening and being able to last longer than he would have normally. Partly is the lack of being able to do clinical trials about that with people because of the Schedule I drug placement that is on right now.
Thank you.
Sure.
Right here.
My question is, if THC is so good for pain and you have trouble in the sports industry with, not having it show up, would topical cannabis be useful in that it doesn't affect your brain in the same way as smoking it? And she said it's different. Everybody's system is different, so it might be something that wouldn't affect your mind so much, but actually be more acceptable to the industry. So I'm just curious about the use of topicals, especially cannabis topicals in sports.
I'm not a doctor, but I play one on TV. So I'm going to give a quick shot here and just kind of differentiate between THC and CBD, because there is 50 state legal topical products that are derived from hemp and cannabis that has CBD, which is a non-psychoactive ingredient. So my wife's 93-year-old grandmother, I brought her some of this topical gel. It doesn't get you high at all. You feel no effects psychoactively. And she literally called me crying on the drive home saying, I put that on and it's the first time my knees have ever felt out of pain in the last 2 years. So from my side, the answer is, yes, there are ways that you can use the derivatives of cannabis and the CBD side of the plant, but you specifically mentioned THC, which is the psychoactive ingredient.
However, when it's applied topically, it doesn't act psychoactively.
It actually can transdermally go into your blood system. That's where I'm going to hand it over to the real doctor.
The answer again, it depends on the person. There are topicals that actually can stay only localized, and unless you have a patch where it can get absorbed systemically, but there are still receptors in the brain where partly the THC and the CBD1 receptors that the THC has is able to go and go into the blood-brain barrier, which is the runner's high essentially, because the anandamide goes in, and centrally you're able to help with the pain, as well as CBD being able to help locally with acute inflammations. But some people don't react well or don't have an effect from that and need to take something that has the entourage effect, which is both THC and CBD together working to be able to help that inflammation.
And I can testify to that, because without the comparison without having the CBD and the THC, my neck inflames. Once I taper off THC for about a day, my neck inflames and it starts to act up to where you might think I have Tourette's. I'm constantly moving, trying to get that comfortable feeling. But until I have some CBD and THC in my system, I live with that. And I rub CBD oil on it, just pure CBD oil, and a lot of times without that combination of both of this, it doesn't help.
Yeah, and last point there again to exude is that it does affect everybody differently. So you have to there's a lot of trial and error with stuff right now. Why don't we go to you here?
Okay, I enjoy cannabis with my workout. And I remember though reading that it could affect your heart rate, and I smoke it, and I don't seem to have a lung capacity issue when I exercise. So I get the focus part, but what about your heart rate and your lung capacity? I feel confident that I'm not having any problem with that, but is there a reason that anybody should be concerned about that?
To me?
Yes, you're the doctor.
Yeah, okay. Go to HelloMD. No, as a matter of fact, the vaporizing, the smoke of cannabis has been shown, as a matter of fact, to help asthmatics in terms of relaxing and bronchodilating the lungs themselves. And there are some people, which is why we tell them to go low and slow to see how they react. It can increase your heart rate, but if you're working out at the same time, is it the cannabis or the workout? But again, to start low and slow to make sure to see how it affects you individually, because again, a dose for Ryan or Kevin may be completely different than for me, and it might knock me down, or not for Jim, or Adam. But so everyone does react differently, and there are cardiovascular effects. A high heart rate is one thing that can affect you for sure. But saying that, using it for bronchodilation for asthma is something that people have studied, and it does seem to show to help that.
Sir?
Can you talk about dosing? How you figure out appropriate dosages? That seems to be one of the biggest variables of this whole thing.
I'm happy.
Let's have someone else share.
Adam, do you want to? I'm happy to jump in on that one. You know, I think most people in the past, and this is a great thing about legalization. We now know what we're putting in our body. We know the amount of the substances that are there. So I don't know how many people back. I'm almost 50, so I used to buy some weed and eat brownies, and I didn't know where I got it from the dealer down the corner. And some of those brownies, you know, they put me to sleep, and I didn't know what was in those brownies. So today, my biggest advice to anybody that's starting edibles, or even if you use it, is you need to start very slow. You can't take, once you eat some, you can't take it away. So all of our products that I make are called microdose, and they're only 5 milligrams of THC. I personally, like, my functional dose of THC is almost 100 milligrams, so I'd have to eat a whole jar of my medicine personally to get me there. But I'm out of the norm, and it costs me a lot more money, unfortunately. But for most people, I think about 5 milligrams personally is a good starting point. I'd actually even say 2.5 milligrams of THC edibly is the best place to start, and then you can always add to that, because the turnoff of when you get it coming on too strong and you eat too much is something that turns people away, and that's why I really want to educate people to start slow with the 2.5 to 5 milligram dosage, and do it at home, you know, obviously when you're not going to be driving in your happy place, kind of.
One of the things I think is interesting, on top of the dosage thing that I don't think a lot of people really think about that much is the product that you're putting into your body, and how that was grown and how it was produced and how that affects your body differently. If you have the same dose product and one of them, the flower, the actual source product that was used, was grown with some sort of chemicals or pesticides, versus one that was grown, you know, organically, and it had the same dose, that could still affect you differently just because of the way that the source material was produced. So that's another thing that I don't think people really consider as much, but I think it's important to ask when you're going into your dispensary or wherever you're getting your cannabis, is asking, you know, where this was grown.
And any good dispensary out there will have they'll usually have some signage that tells you, you know, they have analytical labs, and they have to test their product. They test it for mold, they test it for its THC level. So again, you know, some marijuana can be very potent and some can be less potent. And, you know, my wife likes the less potent stuff. So again, what Adam said, you know, there's a lot of data now that you can use to help you figure out whether it's eating or smoking. And let's go with you right there.
I wanted Ryan to maybe talk a little bit about how we're all talking about, you know, go to the dispensary and talk and get the right thing. But what if, you know, there's 25 states where it's not legal, and you can't go to the dispensary, you have to buy it on the corner. And the difference between what you used to do to get what Ryan needed and how it affected him, you know, he didn't know what he was getting, he didn't know the strain, he didn't know if it was indica, sativa, or anything, and how sometimes it could actually hurt him instead of help him. And eventually we had to get to the point where we would, hopefully there are no police in here, where we would drive 10 hours to Colorado to get what he needed, because when he goes to this dispensary and gets what specifically is for what he needs, it's like night and day. So I know I just kind of said what I was thinking.
I mean, this is
it's huge, a huge difference.
It's pretty much why I'm sitting here right now. You know, we were traveling to LA, and my chronic pain in my neck and my back, and even with my ankle, was acting up bad. I mean, to the point of I couldn't walk, and I was asking my wife to grab a butter knife and used the back of it to massage my neck with it because it's how bad the pain was. So I got on my phone and I started to do my research, and HelloMD popped up, and then I got on and I signed up, and I was able to get my medicine within a matter of an hour or so, probably less. And I had to reach out to Pamela. Is she there? I'm sure she's back there somewhere.
Shout out to Pamela from HelloMD.
You know, I paid $59.99 on LinkedIn. No, this one is $59. LinkedIn has updated. But yeah, I paid that money to talk to her. And when I reached out to her, I said, hey, listen, I want to thank you. I want to thank you for creating a possibility for me to reach out to someone that can actually bring me organic, pesticide-free cannabis for me to use, and not having to call some random guy that I don't know and meet him on the street, and not knowing what may happen from that interaction. You know, so thank you, Pamela. I really appreciate it. Love you.
And to jump on, Pamela, give me a hand. To jump on what, to follow up with Ryan and Adam mentioned about, and your question about what to get. In other words, go to a dispensary and buy a product that's well known, that has a reputable background, where the cannabis has been tested by an independent lab and shown to be pesticide free, how it's grown, etc. Because it does make a huge difference in terms of who makes it, and product by product needs to be tested, and that's partly, hopefully, if things pass in November and there gets to be standardized lab testing across the country or the states that have it, so there's one uniform standard that everyone has to adhere to, because right now labs can vary the concentrations and analysis, sometimes depending on how much business they want. So there is no standardization right now, but I think that is going to be coming as well.
I think that's a good one to end on, because we're going over and I don't want to have anyone miss any other of the programming of this great festival. I do want to have a couple just quick closing remarks for you guys. Hey, if you have a quick question, I don't want to snub anyone, so you have your hand up. Do you want to ask one more quick question?
Sure. For everyone in the sports industry, do you guys expect to see, as of May, just incremental pushes forward, getting a little bit more THC accepted in the industry? Any really big pushbacks from big pharma, even with legalization?
I hope it's something that's done soon.
What I think is, the money in keeping it out of the NFL is so big. I mean, you ask yourself, look at, like, for instance, Tom Brady, when he missed those 4 games, look at his salary. How much money does he get for that one game, for missing that one game? Now that money is being tunneled to 2 programs, the NFL Care and the Gene Upshaw. And every single flag that you see on the field, like for instance, like a face mask penalty, all the violations that happens within the NFL, all that money is tunneled to 2 programs, and that's to help. Granted, those programs are to help athletes, that are retired and guys that are supposedly. It's hard to get on the phone with anyone in those 2 programs at times. It's like pulling teeth, and that's a lot of money that goes to those 2 programs. So, I have a little faith within the NFL, but I don't see it happening. We'll see what happens, honestly.
The NFL is a non-profit. I don't know if everyone knows that, which is kind of a joke to me as well. So listen here, I think we've had a great panel, and I think that we hopefully have opened some eyes and educated you. I'm available anytime through our website, so you can contact me through the 420 Games website. But in closing, this is what I want to say. I want to make a broad statement about more than just sports and cannabis. I want to make a statement about cannabis and humanity. The legalization movement started right here in San Francisco about 20 years ago. There was a guy named Dennis Perone, and it was done to let people with AIDS die with dignity. And that's where the medical marijuana movement started, is really right here. And to me, the gay rights movement and the cannabis rights movement, they mirror each other exactly, because what we're doing is the same as homosexuals, in that they don't hurt anyone, they're living a good life and they're good people. So they were persecuted for years, and they needed to live in the closet in fear of being fired, in fear of being beat up. And that's wrong. And we all thankfully live in this bastion of liberality. There's places that still don't think this way. But for us, as cannabis people, we haven't been as persecuted as that. But I've had to live in fear. I've had to think I might get fired from my job. I've had to have, think I'm gonna lose friends and hide what I do. So I'm very, very happy today that we're, whether you're gay or straight, whether you're black or white, whether you use cannabis or whether you don't use cannabis, this whole movement really on the top level is about respecting one another and letting people, if it's not gonna hurt anyone else, do what they wanna do. And honestly, on that note, since I have the mic, my last closing statement is please everybody, don't vote for Donald Trump. I'm not gonna tell you who to vote for, and just please don't for Donald, don't vote for Donald.